Write a note on Aristotle's theory of mimesis. Marks 10-12. Answer. Poetics by the world-illustrious Greek philosopher Aristotle is an important landmark in the history of literary criticism. Aristotle begins his work with discussion of his concept of imitation, the Greek term for which is mimesis. It was Plato who first used it in connection with poetry, but Aristotle breathed into it a new and definite meaning. For Aristotle, imitation, mimesis, no longer remains mere mimicry. He thinks it to be the recreation of something better than truth or reality. In his view, it is the principle of imitation which unites poetry with the other fine arts. Aristotle calls it to be the common basis of all the fine arts. It no longer remains a mere servile representation of the surface or the appearance of things, but in his theory it becomes a representation of the passions and emotions of men. Different types of poetry follow different means of imitation, like rhythm, melody, and verse. Tragedy and comedy too are some of the notable means of imitation which enable the artist to reveal the deepest feelings of heart of a man. Aristotle equates poetry with music, unlike Plato equating it with painting. According to Aristotle, a painter imitates through form and color, but a poet imitates like a true musician through language, rhythm, and harmony. In this respect, Aristotle thinks a poet to be nearer to the musician than the painter. Regarding the objects of imitation, Aristotle says that the objects of poetic imitation are men in action. The poet may imitate men as they were or are, or as they ought to be. This means that imitation is not a mere photographic representation of the surface of things, but is a creative process. The poet selects and orders his material, and in this way recreates reality. He can present men better than in real life. Thus, he gives us a truth of an ideal or universal kind. He tells us not what men are but what they can be or what they are to be. Aristotle calls poetry to be superior to history. This is because history copies what actually happened, but poetry copies what may happen. The poet, freed from the tyranny of facts, takes a larger or general view of things, presents the universe in particular, and so shares the philosopher's quest for ultimate truth. Aristotle by his theory of imitation answers the charge of Plato that poetry is an imitation of shadows, thrice removed from truth, and that the poet beguiles us with lies. Plato condemned poetry on the ground that in the very nature of things poets can have no idea of truth. The phenomenal world is not the reality but a copy of the reality. Aristotle, on the other hand, tells us that art imitates not the mere show of things but the ideal reality, embodied in every object. The process of nature is a creative process, everything in nature is constantly growing and moving up, and the poet imitates this upward movement of nature. Art, according to Aristotle, reproduces the original not as it is, but what appears to the senses. Art moves in a world of images and reproduces the external according to the idea or image in mind. Thus, the poet does not copy the external world, but creates according to his idea of it. Even an ugly object well imitated thus becomes a source of pleasure. Thus, Aristotle successfully refutes the charge of Plato and provides a defense of poetry. He breathes new life and soul into the concept of poetic imitation, enlarges its scope and shows that it is in reality a creative process. Finished. Please subscribe to the channel for more updates of ready-made notes on English literature. Also, please share this channel to help any student pursue a degree in English literature. Thank you very much for watching the video. Please do not forget to like and comment.